One of the biggest events on the planet, the FIFA World Cup, has 5 billion viewers globally. What happens to the abandoned stadiums, though, when that emphasis shifts away once more? We'll talk about the unsettling fate of the World Cup venues in South Africa, Russia, and Brazil today. We'll also look at Qatar's preparations for dealing with this issue, and why they've already started demolishing one of their stadiums. Hey folks, welcome to Finite. Hope you all are doing good. Over the past decade, Qatar has built an entire World Cup infrastructure with modern stadiums, state-of-the-art training facilities, and improved transport. In total, they spent more than 200 billion, an astronomical sum. This is way more than any other host ever spent, mainly because Qatar had to build the majority of this infrastructure from scratch 4 years earlier. Russia spent closer to 16 billion, while Brazil spent 20 in 2014. But even 20 billion is a lot of money, especially considering the entire event is over in less than a month. Countries hope that, in addition to attracting global attention, the World Cup infrastructure will provide long-term benefits. The transportation links have the potential to revitalize previously depressed areas, while stadiums could begin to recoup their costs by hosting concerts and events. It's a daring vision, vibrant venues that outlive their original purpose, but it doesn't always work that way. When we look at the history of World Cup stadiums, it doesn't paint a pretty picture. Qatar has other plans which we'll get to later, but first, let's see what they're trying so hard to avoid. What transpired at earlier World Cups, leading up to the 2018 World Cup? 9 new stadiums were developed in Russia, and improved 3 already existing locations. It's difficult to estimate how much all of this cost, but it was a sizable chunk of the $16 billion that Russia spent on the competition overall. Russia made the decision to lease these venues to national football teams after the World Cup. It was an obvious step. These stadiums were designed to host matches, and the ticket sales would help to pay the running costs. But this strategy failed. Russia's teams aren't well supported, and most of them struggle to sell even half the tickets to matches at the Fisht Olympic Stadium. In Sochi, the local team draws an average of 6,000 fans, barely 15% of the stadium's total capacity. These low attendances make it hard to cover the running costs. The stadiums are leaking money and taxpayers are footing the bill. They've been described as white elephants, expensive, pointless, and burdensome. A year after the World Cup, when the Kaliningrad Stadium began to sink into a swamp, it cost almost $1 million to save it. Financially, it would have made more sense to simply let the Kaliningrad Stadium collapse, as it was only one of Russia's 9 new stadiums. It's having a prosperous afterlife. Khan Arena has been transformed into a multipurpose venue that hosts football matches, concerts, car shows, and fashion shows. There are also restaurants, bars, and hotel rooms. Maybe that's the key to long-term success. Transform a stadium into something entirely new. But was it the same in other countries? 4 years before Russia, the World Cup host was Brazil, a nation whose stadiums tell a similar story. Most of them are used by domestic teams with thousands of empty seats. Brazil is a passionate footballing nation, but its stadiums are simply too large to fill. The most striking example is the Arena to Amazon. In the remote city of Manaus, the stadium is meant to seat 40,000 people, but the local team draws crowds no larger than 1,000. It's leaking money at an alarming rate, more than $200,000 per month, in a desperate effort to cover costs. Another World Cup stadium, the Estadio Nea, now has recently been used as a bus shelter. Meanwhile, the Arena das Duna is trying to make money by hosting weddings and children's parties. It sounds even worse when we consider the fact that some of these stadiums only hosted 4 World Cup matches. Was all of this worth it for just 6 hours of? Brazilian taxpayers disagree. A quarter of the country is impoverished, and they would prefer that their taxes be spent elsewhere rather than on losing stadiums. In 2015, Jos Cruz, a Brazilian reporter, summed it up. "Except for the debts we inherited, I don't see any World Cup legacy for Brazil." 4 years earlier, the World Cup was hosted in South Africa. These stadiums are doing slightly better than the ones in Russia and Brazil. The Moses Madiba Stadium in the city of Durban now operates as a multipurpose venue, as well as hosting events and music concerts. Visitors can ride a sky car to the top of the central arch and even do some bungee jumping. But South Africa's stadiums aren't all successful. The Cape Town Stadium, complete with 65,000 seats, has never turned a profit. There have even been several calls to demolish the stadium, and it might only be a matter of time. Qatar is keen to avoid these mistakes of previous World Cups, especially after their bid was mired in lots of controversy, with almost 30 FIFA officials forced to step down after evidence of corruption and bribery. Things got even worse. In 2013, when Amnesty International reported serious exploitation of migrant workers, many of these workers were poorly paid or not paid at all and forced to work in dangerous physical conditions. In 2021, an investigative report by the Guardian newspaper estimated that more than 6,000 workers had died in Qatar since their World Cup bid. Overall, it's caused a lot of damage to the country's global reputation. About the only thing they haven't been criticized for are their plans to deal with the World Cup stadiums when the tournament comes to an end. So, what are Qatar's plans for their World Cup stadiums? The existence of 8 colossal stadiums would be irrational for a country as small as Qatar. To put it into perspective, the nation is home to 400,000 Qatari citizens. The stadiums, meanwhile, have the capacity to hold 420,000. Russia is home to 140 million people, while Brazil is home to 220. If these countries can't fill their World Cup stadiums, Qatar won't stand a chance, but Qatar won't try to fill them. Instead, they want to transform them. The 2 biggest stadiums are A and Lusail. Lusail Stadium will undergo a transformation into contemporary multifunctional facilities. For the purpose of making room for stores, cafes, and even so, the method will be the same for a school, a medical facility, and perhaps even some flats. In both stadiums, it will be transformed into a 5-star hotel, a shopping center, and a hospital. The pitch will be kept right at the heart of the other, but it will mainly be used to host community events as opposed to professional football matches. 3 more of the stadiums, Ahmad bin Ali Al and Alma Stadium, will still be used for football matches, but only after the venues are massively downsized in all 3 cases. The capacity will be cut from 45,000 down to 20,000 by removing temporary seating. This strategy was also used in Russia, with temporary stands squeezed at the end of Qatar Bird's central stadium. Qatar promised to donate the temporary seating to other countries who are looking to improve their sporting infrastructure. The smaller 20,000-seat stadiums are unlikely to reach capacity, because the Qatari Football League attracts crowds as small as a couple hundred people at times. But there's also Stadium 974. This stadium's most innovative solution is a completely temporary venue, the first of its kind in World Cup history. It was built with 974 recycled shipping containers and can be completely dismantled and rebuilt elsewhere. It's a game-changing approach to sporting infrastructure that future World Cups could emulate. Instead of constructing new stadiums in each host country, a set of temporary stadiums could be relocated. Qatar also intends to use its World Cup infrastructure to host future events. That is precisely what Brazil did in 2016 when it hosted the Summer Olympics, and they used 5 of their previous World Cup stadiums. However, after the Olympics, the situation remained essentially unchanged. Qatar will host the Asian Cup, an international football tournament for teams from Asia and Oceania, in 2024. They will also host the 2030 Asian Games, an international athletics tournament, with more participants than the Olympics. In both of these cases, they plan to reuse their World Cup infrastructure as much as possible, making sure the projects don't go to waste. They'd also set their sights upon hosting the Olympics, maybe as soon as 2030. Only time will tell whether any of these plans will succeed, but one is already in the works. Stadium 974 was deconstructed after it hosted a match between Brazil and South Korea on December 5th. According to rumors, the stadium's pieces will be shipped to Uruguay, which hopes to host the 2030 World Cup. So, what are your thoughts? Are mobile stadiums like this a good idea for the future? Please let us know in the comments section below. If you like this video, please share it and subscribe to Finite. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right.